us off with?
Well, the announcement I have is you're going to hear it again in church. The pastor is going to start, he's going to do a Lenten study on the 24 hours that changed the world. And this will start, if I remember right, the 9th of April, March. Yeah, that's in here. So it'll start on Sunday the 9th. 5, yeah. And we'll check on how many we might need of these books. And we're just get them. You can put money back in the church can pay for them originally, and they can put money back in. We're trying to get them at a good rate. They sell for 15. Maybe we can get them for 10. Depends if you buy a bulk. So, but anyway, he's going to announce this in church, and we'll get you here. We'll get you. You have plenty of time in advance.
This Tuesday is the last Ilona Bible study, and the participants we have decided that this lunch will be everybody going to Dempsey's after the final chapter we do. And Ilona will be presenting that one. If you saw the Seasoned Saints, it was really beautiful singing and playing. You missed it. So, sorry you missed it, but I think it went fairly well. We had lots and lots of soup and lots of sandwiches, and except for the overabundance of desserts, which we always have, everything seemed to go, we had more than enough, but a lot of people took stuff home, so it wasn't bad at all.
There's still some desserts in the fridge. Are those Ilona's?
Those are all Ilona's, and I'm going to try to get Clyde to take them home. I think we're going to have to take them and sneak them into his truck. So. There's a marriage enrichment ceremony coming up March 15th. You guys, it's a one-day thing. You guys just heard about the Lenten study that we're having. And I guess this is a new entry. It shows givings and amount needed. Once a month for January.
Also, off the cuff here, just want to, part of the youth, what do you call it? At school, they got to do community service. And I noticed yesterday that the Champaign kids were over cleaning the family life building as part of their, it's not been published everywhere, but just to let you know that they did help clean that up. Well, you have to ask them all.
We probably can't afford them. Probably have to use guilt and stuff like that, as you know from having a youth.
They've used them in the crisis centers. They've earned hours at the crisis center.
Yep.
I've had some of them come and work.
Yep.
Well, that's for school, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, something to do with school.
Yeah, it is.
They have to have
Service hours.
service hours, yeah. Everybody has to have that to graduate and stuff.
I have to tell you about our mayor. She's in Georgia, way down far away, pretty far away. Anyway, she's out of 130 pigs. She won second place.
Yay.
She went reserve champion.
What was her piggy's name?
I don't know which one that.
Oh, don't know which one.
Showing 3 today. 3 more.
Well, lots of piggies. No no goats or whatever she does. She does sheep or goats?
It's good. I mean,
Goats.
she got pigs.
But she also has,
She used
d-
to do goats.
Goats, and she has done sheep.
oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
So we're just on pigs now, little piggies. Well, that's good. Anybody else have any announcements? Let's go back to the sick people then. Carolyn Cook was able to come and do the monies at the Seasoned Saints, so I think she enjoyed that because she could finally, this time she could hear everything. She was in a good spot because he sang, he really projected, and so she had it wasn't a front row seat, but she had a very good seat to it this time. Donna, did you get to have your treatment?
No, I have it every 3 weeks,
Oh, okay.
so that's why I went here last week, because I had it. Yeah.
Okay, well, you look gorgeous in red. You look very Valentine.
I have a prayer request.
Okay.
Oh, I do too. Well, mine is, he used to be on our prayer, thing. His name is Wesley Willis. He's the guy that I grew up with, his cousin across the road from me. He bought, his cousin and then bought my mom's house in Wichita. But his name is Wesley, and he has like a 15-year-old, 14-year-old son. But Wesley has a very aggressive type of cancer. And he has a scan, a PET scan coming up this week. And he's doing everything he can to stay alive. You know, I mean, he's young. Wesley's young. He has a trach, permanent trach. And, you know, I mean, I just don't understand.
What's his
My
last
whole
name?
family,
Willis, Willis.
yeah, Wesley Willis.
We need to put Tom Roberts on there. Ace Hardware. His cancer's getting pretty aggressive. His mama said he's still fighting, but he's got it rough right now.
And my request is for Jay Meadows. His, cancer is gone, and now they think it's come back. But
James has come back.
he's gonna have, he had a test. And- But anyway, he's got to have a test.
Keep my brother-in-law in your prayers. His name's Brian Coons. He's going blind because of his diabetes and got retina problems, but he can see out of one eye, can't see out of the other. They're doing all kind of tests.
Right now, he can't because they gave him injections in the better eye. The other eye has, because of uncontrolled diabetes, the blood pooled up behind his eye, and there's not much they can do. Anything else going on?
Sylvia Brown is supposed to go back to Greenville sometime later this month for, I guess, a stent about her kidneys. I'm not sure, but she's gonna have some kind of surgery.
I used to think cancer was something they named stuff when they didn't know what it was. But now I'm beginning to think they gotta get their acts together. This is just happening.
Well, people are living longer, and not with cancer, I mean, people are, just in general, are living longer, and they have better technology to detect things maybe they couldn't detect before. Even detecting it earlier so that you have a chance to fight it and stuff. So that may be why we see it more often. Plus, you know, there's some science that the little plastic particles that we all have in our bloodstreams these days could play a part, or the stuff we eat, the air we inhale. What you gonna do? I can't stop breathing and still run around, so gotta go with it. So anything else? Last chance for prayer requests.
I have one more.
Okay.
The neighbor across the road, his mother, Peggy, she helped me pack up my mom's whole house. Her name is Peggy Patrick, and she used to take Wesley to all his, she has, I forgot the name of it now. She's going blind.
Well,
Um,
not cataracts.
Yeah, macular degeneration, yeah.
Ooh.
And she's had to give up driving and
Uh,
everything. Having her, groceries, it's a huge adjustment for her.
yeah.
You know,
Mine's just started.
sad,
Told her that when I have an eye, but I do have it.
but
Yeah.
she, I grew up with him, and she helped me do my mom's whole house and everything, really.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and open with prayer. Thank you, Lord, for letting us come together today on this beautiful rainy day. We thank you for the moisture you brought our way. We know we will need it later in the year. Bless those who are here today to worship you and to learn from your word. Bless the messages that we receive today, and help that we may bring them in and find something from you. Bless all these that we've named today, especially those who are dealing with cancer, Lord. Not just them, but their family. Watch over those of our church who are unable to be with us today. Bless the families who have recently had to go through a loss, Lord, of their loved ones. Give us your grace this day and help us to do everything in your will. In Christ's name we pray, amen. Okay, it's a big lesson, but not as big as 7. 7 we might have to cut into 2, because it is, and it's not the length of it, it's what it's saying in this. This is a little bit strange one when you just read it and look at it and try to figure out what it says. Thank heavens for commentaries and those who study and are more knowledgeable about the times and the different characters in the Bible and what's going on. They allow us to see into it more than just individually studying we might do, which is one of the reasons we come to church and Sunday school, in order to be schooled. We're starting in Ecclesiastes chapter 6, starting at 6:1. I'm not going to read it. You have it in front of you. If anybody doesn't have a handout for 6, let me know. In order to get the significance of this verse and the section it's in, we need to dial back a little. In Ecclesiastes 5:18, it says that for those to whom God has given riches and wealth, he's often also given the ability to eat from those things. It says, furthermore, as for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, he has also empowered him to eat from them and to receive his reward and rejoice in his labor. This is the gift of God. It's not necessarily meaning you eat everything that you earn, but you have the enjoyment of everything: food, house, health, wealth. Those are all gifts from God and given to mankind to enjoy. But here's an exception to the situation in chapter 6. Sometimes things don't work out that way. Different commentaries state different reasons why that might be so. One commentary said invaders might come in and take all you have, if you remember poor Job. Another said the wealthy may fall from power and have their riches taken and their power taken. I think that was spoken of by Solomon earlier on. You can come up with a couple more different reasons why we may have a lot and all of a sudden it's snatched from us. But the situation is that the wealthy and rich did not get to enjoy the abundance of their position because it was not allowed by God, and another is now enjoying the bounty. So that's the situation we're in here in the first part of chapter 6. They're just out of luck. But Solomon attributes that to it being allowed by God, not necessarily caused by God because of some reason, but allowed by God. I think I'd shared with the class before, it's like when I was a 9-year-old, our car was hit by a drunk driver, my stepfather killed, my mother crippled for life, and my sister had some injuries she sustained. That was not caused by God. I don't think he told the guy to go have a couple drinks at the local bar and then come out and drive. The guy had been arrested for drunk driving before, but it was allowed because other people have free agencies. That being said, sometimes it's not the free agency, it's Mother Nature deciding that she would take the hurricane from the coast up to North Carolina. Who knew? I'd never heard of hurricanes in North Carolina before till Hurricane Helene decided to roll up where she went, taking out whole towns and stuff. So there are different reasons that these things might happen to take away all that you have, and a lot of people are still experiencing that. If this is the case, if a man has everything he needs to enjoy life and yet he can't for whatever reason, in Solomon's mind, the situation is so horrible that the man may as well never been born. That's what Ecclesiastes 6:3 says. The preacher ponders a few hypothetical situations that are all positive. Begetting 100 children, and back then, if you had 100 children, it was a good thing. Here, if you have 2 or 3, that should be cut off. All this Duggar stuff with 21 and counting is like, what's wrong with you guys? But Psalm 127 says, "Behold, children are a gift from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward from him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be put to shame when they speak with their enemies in the gate." And of course, it was an agrarian society. You need a whole bunch of people to work in the fields, and also you're going to need somebody to take care of you in your elder age, and people didn't live that long, especially children. There was a high rate of mortality back then. So you don't want to just have 1 or 2 kids, because the chances are they may not make it all the way to you being old and needing their help. Instead, you have bunches of them. Long life was also considered a special blessing, a gift to those who obeyed God's commandments. Long life was one of the blessings that God gave to Solomon. However, if the rich man had all these blessings and yet was not satisfied, he was to be pitied. And if his many children did not provide him with a proper burial, that was a tremendous humiliation and dishonor in the Hebrew culture, showing lack of love and respect. In such instances, Solomon said, a miscarried child who never knew despair or disappointment with life, or never knew lack of filial love, was better off than the rich man. In other words, he would have been better had he never been born. Now, why would the preacher say that? Well, he explains himself in Ecclesiastes 6, 4 through 5. For though he, the stillborn, cometh in with vanity, and departeth in darkness, and his name shall be covered with darkness. Moreover, though he, which is the stillborn, hath not seen the sun, nor known anything, this, the stillborn, hath more rest than he, the other man, in verse 2. So that's what it comes down to. The stillborn at least had rest. He never had to go through all the things that are inherent in our lives. But the man who had everything but couldn't enjoy it was just miserable. I wonder what Solomon's concept of the rest of the miscarried child was. So I looked at Job, the rest, not the rest of the child, but the rest, like Job 3, 11 through 19 says he's, of course, sitting on his pile with his boils and his friends around him, and he's being miserable at this point. He's lost everything. Even his wife told him to just curse God and die. He's not in a good state. Job says, "Why did I not die at birth, come forth from the womb and expire? Why did the knees receive me, and why the breasts that I should suck? For now I would have lain down and been quiet. I would have slept then. I would have been at rest with kings and with counselors of the earth, who rebuilt ruins for themselves, or with princes who had gold, who were filling their house with silver. Or like a miscarriage which is discarded, I would not be, as infants that never saw light. There the wicked cease from raging, and there the weary are at rest. The prisoners are at ease together. They do not hear the voice of the master. The small and the great are there, and the slave is free from his master." So he's envisioning an afterlife, and had he died when he was born, he would have entered into that afterlife and not had to go through what the last few weeks or months or whatever time frame it was that he had to go through when he lost everything. So the stillborn is at rest, never even having experienced consciousness. And the rich man who has no enjoyment of life or any good gift from God remains in the world in the agony of what should have been or what could have been. It reminds me of the rich man in hell looking at the beggar Lazarus in the bosom of Abraham, begging that the beggar come and put a drop of water on his tongue, if you all are familiar with that story from the New Testament. Anybody not familiar with it? No. Good. Okay, verses 6 through 9. And even more basic than that, both of these people die. That's what he says in Ecclesiastes 6:6. So to the preacher, long life, without the capability to enjoy it, was nothing more than prolonged unhappiness. His wealth would not keep him from going to Sheol, which the Jews called, I understand it was not quite hell, but it sure wasn't heaven. So his wealth would not keep him from going to Sheol, where he would have no advantages. He had no satisfaction in life or in death. But there's another side of the problem of not enjoying what God gives you. We just talked about one side, which is having enough to be content, but then somehow having someone else enjoy it. It's like pouring salt in an opened wound. So you work and only achieve enough in life to keep your body alive. No feeling of contentment or satisfaction or gratification or enoughness. It's like you're at the dinner table and you eat some good homemade Southern food with family and friends who you're on good terms with and don't discuss politics. After the coffee and pound cake, you push back your chair. You've been careful not to gorge yourself because you want some leftovers for later. You were hungry, but now you're full. You've enjoyed the talk and the laughter and the fellowship. You are full body and soul and content with the time spent. Well, for Solomon's rich man, there is no pleasant afternoon. His work is hard and distasteful. He gets to eat only enough to survive, never to feel all the way full. He has no pleasant fellowship or conversations. He is empty, body and soul. Moreover, the lusts of the body and soul are never satisfied with him, because he has a God hole, and no matter how much of the worldly delights he manages to fit in there, the hole is never filled, and the emptiness gnaws at him. What about the rhetorical questions? What hath the wise more than the fool? Obviously, the answer in this case is none. And the following questions on what advantage does the poor man hath, knowing how to walk before the living? That is, the poor man knows how to survive, or he wouldn't be alive. Well, the poor have no advantage either. Whether you are wise or foolish or rich or poor, if you have an empty God hole, you won't be able to be satisfied. The next sentence, what the eye sees is better than what the soul desires, is an under the sun question. We can sometimes satisfy our longings or lust, be they for material things or other people or status, if we have money or influence or power. But what the soul desires can only be attained by a relationship with God. If we try to obtain this under the sun, we will be unable to. Our righteousness falls short of the glory of God. We cannot use either good works or many prayers or even personal sacrifice to buy ourselves into heaven. Only the humble, contrite sinner who lays his sins on the crucified Messiah may come before the throne of God as a forgiven child. But Solomon's viewpoint does not allow for this. Solomon advises, be content with what you have. Don't keep restlessly seeking more. If you do, it's vanity and it will vex your spirit. So enjoy the good things God gives you right now. Verse 10. Now, it's hard to enjoy the things God has given you when you have a contentious spirit about the way that he's ordering your life. When you're consumed by greed and lust, you know that you're not really bowing to God's plans for you in this life. And that's why in these verses, Solomon urges submission to God's sovereignty in life. He asserts that God has foreordained everything, getting back with our Presbyterian brothers. He has known man, what he is, what will happen to him, etc. And therefore, don't think you can contend with God and somehow prevail. Now, this doesn't exclude prayer, but it definitely does exclude bitter contention with God. Don't bitterly argue with God about what he's doing in your life. He has a plan for you that he determined before you were born. So don't feel like you're going to get ahead by bitterly arguing with God about his plans. Rather, submit to him who is mightier than you. Now, this doesn't mean, like I said, this doesn't exclude prayer. Remember Abraham talking to God's angel he sent down about destroying Sodom and Gomorrah. And he said he does it in a respectful way, although he is trying to urge God's action, or in this case, inaction. If there are 50 righteous men, would you not save the 2 cities for that? Lord says, okay, if there's 50 righteous men, please hear me, Lord. And he goes down and down till I get, 5? Is 10 or 5? I can't remember. Is the number. And he said, okay, but the bank's closed. If there are that many righteous men, I'll save the town. Turns out it didn't matter. He should have left it at 300 or whatever it was, because the towns really didn't have righteous men in them, and they got destroyed anyway. But you can go before God. You go before and struggle with God about different things. he says to ask for what you need. It's just you don't go up and say, I know that I should do this, but I should have been a rich person. I'm sorry. That's Fiddler on the Roof. If I were a rich man. Don't you guys remember that? Yeah. Okay. But Tevier, too, is doing it in a respectful manner. He's not arguing with God. He's bringing things before God, just like Job did. He comes before God, and God says that although Job, was saying, why, I don't understand, you guys are wrong, I didn't neglect the poor, I didn't neglect the widows and orphans, I gave whatever, and I made sure things were offered for my sins and my children's sins and stuff, so I am innocent in this. He never let go of his innocence. And the people that God fussed at the end were his friends who kept saying, well, you must have done something because God wouldn't do this otherwise. This is you pissed God off, You've done something. There is sin in your life. So we come before God, but we also don't spend our life bitterly angry about, God, you put me back in Lawrence, South Carolina after all these years when I swore I'd do anything but come back to Lawrence. I can either be bitter about the whole thing or I can accept that circumstances led me this way, and I believe it was in the will of God, so I'm going to do the best I can where he's planted me. He obviously didn't decide to plant me somewhere else. Missionaries have come back from missions saying, what? Oh, missionaries come back from missions and the missions are not a success. And even though they thought they were going in the will of God, either they've sown fruit that they can't see, or perhaps they went because they wanted to go rather than it was in the will of God at that time. So, that's what Solomon is addressing here. I'm not saying that he's saying don't come before God and let him know your needs, because Christ told us that that's what we need to do. But to have a contentious spirit about it and to bitterly argue with him over things that you see are not in his will, you're not doing yourself any favors. St. Paul tells us in Romans 9:20, on the contrary, who are you, O man, who answers back to God? The thing molded would not say to the molder, why did you make me like this? Will it? And St. Paul, of all people, he talked about his thorn in the flesh that he had to contend with, but he was willing to be satisfied with it because the Lord had made it clear to him that it was not going to be relieved. And if anybody suffered through stuff that you'd bring before God, it was definitely Paul. Anyway, going on to verse 11-12. The preacher tells us here that the more we angrily contend with God on this subject of our lives and what has happened to us or is happening, it just makes our mindset more futile. How have you benefited by angrily contending with God? You're not. It's vanity for you and me to do this, because do you really think that you know better than God about how your life ought to run? Your life is spent like a shadow. It goes by quick. We don't know the future. How can you or I pretend to know how God ought to direct our lives? We need to submit to his authority. As we hear from the scriptures over and over, God knows what is good for man in this life under the sun. We don't know with the certainty of our senses what comes after, but our God does. And part of submitting to God's sovereignty in our lives involves learning how to value various things that we experience. What is truly good for us in our lives? God knows. God intervenes in our lives to bring about good. Otherwise, our evil natures will destroy us and prevent us from fulfilling our true spiritual calling. I think what really gets our goat with not having control over our lives is the fact that God seldom lets us know what's in store for us in the future. We want to read the end of our story, skipping to the end without trying to pause and enjoy the chapter we're reading at present. As believers, we can know that God is in control. He gives us our free will, but also puts desires in our heart through the Holy Spirit so that we may do what we love and still do God's will. If we walk in the Spirit, our souls are satisfied by the fruit of the Spirit. The last verses in chapter 6 could be viewed as a return to the cycles of life. However, to view this chapter solely in this way is too shallow. Rather than pursuing a futile debate with God about his sovereign plans for the ages or for us individually, we need to receive by faith that he works all things together for the good to those who love him. The problem arises when we try to live under the sun rather than by faith. Our ultimate reward is eternal, not temporal. In all his questions, Solomon recognizes that no man can provide any answers. We recognize that only God has the answers, and God has all the answers. And I heard something on a commentary I was listening to this morning about it, and it said that the wealthiest place in the world is a cemetery because it contains all the unused goodwill, undone good deeds, hopes and dreams that were never tried or realized. You should try to milk life for all the good it has that God's bestowed to you. Live your life as much as you can, as hard as you can. If there's something that you feel God's calling you to do, you should do it. You should not be held back by, I'll do it next week. We don't know if we have next week. None of us. We don't know how long we have. We have two goal lines. We're born and we die, and none of us can see to the end. None of us can see all the stuff in between. And when we're looking around for God's blessings, we can see those. We can focus on those, and we need to enjoy the chapter of our life where we are rather than looking back saying, oh, if I was only in high school again, which I would never, ever say. I'm not like the people who want to be in high school or in my 20s or any of that. That was awful. Let me just go where I am now. That's where I've been most content. But also I feel more that I'm walking in according with God's will than I have for many, many, many years, because I thought I could do it all myself. And now we get to the questions and any commentary anybody wants to make. Number one. Oh, go ahead.
First question there, that's a tough one.
In what ways is a miscarried baby better off than people, it's than, not then, who are born? Use personal examples to explain your answers. Was miscarried baby better off than Solomon? Why? Is the dead baby better off than you? Why? Go ahead.
One thing I can figure that out is the miscarried baby is with God then.
That's okay. Yeah. Trials and tribulation. I volunteered with the juvenile court when I lived back in Shreveport, and I had to quit, and I stopped disciplining by physical discipline my child after I heard one report. They brought in a little girl, was young, and she had bruises on her leg on either side of her knees. And they said, what? She had a lot of other injuries too. And the neighbor reported that he heard the parent putting her feet in boiling water and holding her legs down. Was that, and then I thought, thinking, abortion is definitely murder, but was that child who will be scarred for life any worse off than an aborted baby? And that gave me a different view when you see the abuse that is done. Are these aborted children? And I think they're children. I think it's murder. I have no question that you are stopping a life. But what kind of life might that child be living? Anyway, after that, I could no longer spank my child. Although I did threaten to take a 2x4 when he was in high school to get him out of bed for school. But he never believed me because it was too heavy. So,
You know, I think they should do to the parents what the parents did to the child.
yeah.
But they're not going to.
No, they're not going to.
See, I had a lady from DSS ask me, "We need you in child protective services." I said, "No, ma'am, you don't need me." She said, "Why?" I said, "If I really and truly thought they were guilty, I'd be chasing them with a baseball bat."
Yeah,
She said,
me
"Why
too.
would you have a baseball bat?" I said, "To equalize."
The equalizer.
Let me tell you, as a school nurse, we saw some of the most,
Horrific stuff.
yeah, that you would, right here, right here.
Yeah,
And, nightmarish stuff. But, yeah, and I met a lot of nice people in DSS. And I know a lot of people go into it thinking, I'm gonna do this and this and this. You
But they
can't.
won't let
You're
you.
one person, you can't. You have to conform to them or get out.
yep,
I saw
Yep.
that, and that's your,
I
that was
had-
our go-to people, but it didn't matter if you called them or not. They were not gonna do anything.
I
One
know.
out of 50, maybe they maybe did the right thing, but in 6 months, they were right back at it.
yep,
Didn't matter.
Yep.
Been home, it shouldn't be in.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because they don't have enough places to put them.
What Anna Faye said, about the child that was miscarried child, I believe that miscarried child went directly to the Lord.
I do too.
And that child will never experience what we experience, but he or she has a direct,
Yeah.
we have the opportunity to experience lots of things. And I think the biggest thing we, as Luann mentioned, I think is our relationship with God. It will continue to grow and grow.
Well,
each
and I
day.
think like you're talking about our beginning of life, and then it's what you do with the dash in between.
Right.
What you do there to make a difference or try to make a difference, that you hope those people remember that, not,
And it's not just the remembrance, but our actual joy that we enjoy what God has given us. We don't have to go around with a down face all the time.
Well, I will say that Luann does enjoy living here better now than we did 30 years ago.
I lived here during my high school years, hated it, went to college and said, I'm never going back.
isn't that amazing? I did the same thing about Ware Shoals and loved it as an adult when I finally went back as I grew up, and would go back today in a heartbeat. In a minute.
I had an underclassman, hadn't seen him in years, said, "You never left Lawrence?"
Why?
But what kept him from saying, "Well, what you doing back here?" I knew his mother had passed, and that was the only reason he'd come back, for several legal things. But you never left. I was happy. Why?
Yep. Yep, all of us have different paths. But I think I had to go places to learn stuff that I brought back with me.
Go to that fourth one first.
Okay, Solomon asks, what advantage the wise man has over the fool? Answer his question.
I did not find that anywhere, and I read it in different Bibles. But when you were saying something, you gave an answer, but
Oh, it says that really if neither of them have a relationship with God, then the wise man doesn't have any. Like Solomon, he had broken his relationship with God at this point. He had decided he could do it better himself because he was wealthy and powerful and had 1,000,000 wives, and he would just worship the other gods and stuff, which was a lot easier because all you had to do was send up some cows and stuff and they were happy. So the wise man doesn't have any advantage over the fool if the fool had a relationship with God, then he would have a better advantage. But if they're both on an even plane with God, then neither of them has. Both of them will be empty, whether they eat at night or not, but spiritually they're both empty.
But a wise man, I think the wise man understands that all the gifts come from God.
Not always. Not always. They may think they did everything themselves. Like,
It's according to how you use the wise
yeah.
knowledge.
Yep. And wisdom before God is different than the book learning wisdom, like Solomon had. His wisdom was given to him, but was given to him specifically, he asked for wisdom to rule the people. So God gave him how to build this, how to build that, how to make different things happen so that he could satisfy the people, judge the people and all that. But he was not, when he got older, he let his wealth and power take over. Yeah, crazy enough to have 700 wives and 300 concubines. What an idiot. And he only had one son. One son. Although he wanted more. I bet he had girls